Welcome to The Centurion's Path, a podcast about the life and the trials and tribulations of those who serve. This podcast is about the heroes who protect our communities. To truly understand the path of the protector, tune in with AJ DeAndrea and John McDonald, two nationally known leaders who live the Centurion's Path every day. Thank you all for joining us today, and thanks to our sponsor for today's podcast, Southwestern Communications, enriching lives and improving school safety since 1976.
Welcome to the Centurion's Path. We're podcasting live from COSSBA, the Consortium of State School Board Associations in Dallas, Texas. We're on the road. Yeah, pretty cool.
Again.
And soon we may be up in Canada podcasting.
Yeah, I think that's going to be May at, I believe it's going to be OTAB, the Ontario Tactical Association Board. I've done quite a few presentations up there and worked with them for quite some time. They're big fans of the podcast. And I think this afternoon we'll be cementing that date.
Good.
And that's going to be fun. That'll be, like I said, I think that's May. So
nice. I'm excited.
Yeah.
We're hanging out with educators today and cops tomorrow. That's a good group.
Right.
Any way you look at it, you can't beat it.
No, not at all.
It's a lot of fun.
And get to hang out. That's the biggest thing.
Right. Yeah.
That's
and it's
the biggest
all
thing.
Good times. So.
Because you've been busy. You were just down in Houston.
Yeah.
With my daughter Madalena, right?
We had a great time. We were training a private school down there and spent a good day with them, and that was the second trip down there, and you and I are going to go down there and do some work.
Yes, first week.
Excited about that. I'm in 7 cities in the next month.
Yeah, you're busy.
And
I just came from Phoenix. Yeah, did a great had a great training day with Scottsdale and kind of that local group right there, Mesa and all that. So that went really well.
Good deal.
And, again, that was Safe Haven Defense bringing me down there to open some doors and have some deeper conversations. It was good.
They're doing some really good work.
They really
Safe
are.
Haven is. I'm really impressed with what they've got going.
Yeah, without question. Right.
Pretty unique to the industry.
Yeah,
it feels like. So, we're hanging out today. We're going to be talking to some, I think, unique people. Mm-hmm. Excited about that because, as we've talked about, those that protect come in different walks of life and different segments, and certainly the group here of school board members that raise their right hand, swear an oath to their state constitution, and our elected officials are doing their best work every day to protect kids. And they're the policy makers, and they control the funding and guidance and for what that school is going to be, or that district. And you always talk about the climate and culture is the first pillar of everything.
Right. So, and that's the backbone of it, right?
Right.
And that is the backbone of it. Yeah. So, this is an interesting conference. I'm really looking forward to the presentation we'll be doing tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Have a lot of administrators in front of us, and again, just set the seeds for maybe some deeper conversations and being analytical about how we're going forward and what we can actually do to implement those 8 pillars we talk about all the time.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm happy that we can be down in Dallas and have some conversation and hang out with some good people and network. I think the opportunity to build relationships is really what conferences are about.
Yeah. That's the nexus of everything we talk about.
It really is. So
yeah.
We, I think, have Roger Eddy here, and we're going to introduce Roger in just a second because he was referred to us by our good friend Nate McVicker.
Yes.
From Safe Haven.
Yes.
And Nate has a long-time relationship with Roger. I'm going to let Roger tell that story.
Sure.
But Roger, why don't you come back here and sit down with us? And
how you doing?
Love to meet you.
AJ DeAndrea, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
How are you?
John, I'm doing well.
Good to finally meet you. I've heard a lot about you.
Well, from Nate, then we'll just take some of it and
right.
We'll straighten most of what he told you out.
Yeah.
That's the way it always is, right?
Yeah.
Pull that mic closer to you. Make sure we got good sound going.
How's this? Work okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
So, Roger, tell us about your background, because you're an educator by trade.
I am. I have a degree in education, secondary education. I taught physical education, government. Physical education led me into coaching, and I coached basketball and baseball, was an athletic director. I lost enough games, they made me principal of the school.
It's funny how that happens, huh?
Yeah. And actually, I was principal of the school where I had coached and taught, but I left there and went to Watseka.
Oh, okay.
And that was my introduction to Nate McVicker. Nate was a student of mine.
Really?
At Watseka High School.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
He was a kid that, he's a great guy, but in high school, I had him in the office as an office helper because otherwise he would have been sent to the office from most of the classes he is in for being a little bit...
So really, you saved his career.
I saved,
Yeah.
there's no question about that. But Nate
We seem to all do that on a regular basis with him still.
Nate.
So,
Exactly.
what do you know?
Yeah, he is a special kid. I probably have had thousands of kids. I was a high school principal for 7 years. And some are special. Some just have some unique qualities. And Nate and I have kept in touch over the years. After I was a principal for a while, I went back to a little town where I had started my career in Hudsonville, and I became superintendent of schools
okay.
there. And I was superintendent for 17 years.
Oh, man.
Wow.
At that school. Nate actually came a couple times and did some post-prom work for our school district.
Okay.
He is a hypnotist.
Really?
Yes. And so he did a program or two on hypnotism for students
I
at
had
post-prom.
no idea.
Me either.
Wow.
Yeah, so, be careful.
Yeah, no kidding. I watch
Jeez.
myself now when I'm around.
During the time I was superintendent there, I also was elected 5 times as a state representative.
Oh, wow.
And spent 10 years in Springfield representing the 109th District. From there, I went to the School Board Association in Illinois as the executive director for 6.5 years before I finally retired. But retirement is, something that I didn't. I'm getting a D- right
Yeah,
now.
we
I
failed.
may fail.
Well, we've failed.
So in the county where I was school superintendent, there's a community college that the president there became chancellor of a 4-campus system. And I was asked to be the interim president at that community college for a year. Kind of a great, fun thing for me to do, to return to the place where I had been a school superintendent. And then I went to work for the community college system.
Oh, wow.
After I was done as president there. When I was in the General Assembly, I was a sponsor of the Dual Credit Quality Act in Illinois, and it established the dual credit system so students in high school could also take college credit their junior and senior year. And so the community college and I worked together that year. I was an assistant to the chancellor and helped introduce synchronized learning to campuses that are in the rural part of our community. And then the following year, I was asked to be the college president at Olney Central College, another community college. And I just finished that last August, and now am on the Illinois State Board of Education as a member and involved in a lot of policy issues and obviously interested in school safety.
Sure.
So 2 things come to mind. First, we were talking about Nate McVicker, who is part of the Safe Haven Defense Group that was was our first sponsor of this podcast, and Nate was on one of our shows, and so that's the connection for the listeners out there. One of my questions for you, though, is how big of an issue and how big of a change did school safety, at the beginning of your career and the end of your career become?
They're just night and day. I mean, let me tell you, my first few years as a teacher and a coach in the early 80s, we would have baseball practice after school, and the parking lot, it was in a rural area. Students would actually have pickup trucks with gun rack and guns in the car.
Yes.
Hanging.
That's how it was when I went to high school.
Yeah, me too.
And we would go after baseball practice. There's a wooded area behind our baseball field, and we would go and shoot squirrels, or we would do hunting, or I mean, there is no comparison whatsoever to the environment and the climate that we're in now to when I first started.
Yeah.
In a lot of different ways, but certainly related.
I have the same experience, right? Back in high school, at the end of football practice, we would all drive out. So Arvada Senior High School, Denver metro area, literally like 72nd and Quaker, which is full of homes now, and we'd dove hunt.
Yeah.
You know, we'd all go out there, and your shotgun was in a rack inside your truck. Totally different climate.
Well, the schools didn't have, obviously, fences, buzzer systems.
Yeah.
We didn't really even, good or bad, keep track of who came into school.
Yeah,
we didn't have,
right.
They didn't have to sign at the office, get a visitor's badge, and do all those things. I mean, there are some things that obviously probably should have even then been a little tighter. And over the years, there have been so many things that have happened that have caused us to have to make our campuses secure that, night and day difference.
Where did you start seeing the change? About what era?
I think the real changes began, and I remember to this day driving back from a law conference I was at as a beginning superintendent when Columbine happened. And the news came across while I was driving back, and I think from a historical standpoint, for me at least, that really marked the beginning of paying attention.
Sure.
School districts paying attention to the potential dangers that. So I don't. The years are going to escape me, and I don't know exactly what year that was.
So I don't know if you know this, but I was the team leader on the first sweep through the center part of the building at Columbine High School.
I think
that was
Nate did
April
mention
20th,
that.
1999.
Yeah, and I had just been a superintendent for 3 years at the time. I was just leaving maybe one of my first or second law conferences.
Yeah.
And obviously the news just all the way back to is about a 2-hour drive for me, but It was all about that incident. And I think after that, look, I was in the General Assembly in Illinois for 10 years, right? And public policy began to change after that.
Yeah, it was the watershed moment without question.
Yeah, so I went to the General Assembly in 2003 in Illinois. And, by that time, some legislative policy had changed, and we were just in the beginning stages of, I think, trying to identify how we might prevent that from happening. And there was controversy, when we began to look at ways to make schools more secure. There was pushback.
Yeah.
Obvious pushback because the community and the public, and they were used to a certain environment, and they really didn't like some of the things that we felt like we had to do. School board members even, we had a guest policy. We give them a badge, and they had to have, or be recognized as in the school under our approval.
Right.
And
that went over well, I bet.
Well, no, I mean, so the community that's used to just to come in to go to the birthday party for their kid,
Right.
Yeah.
in third grade, right, or bring the cupcakes.
Yeah.
They had to begin to sign in, and that went from that to, steadily to a point where there are now buzzers on doors.
Yeah.
Right.
What advice?
Blows me, just really quick, and then you go for the advice part. But what bothers me and still blows me away today, there's still pushback.
It's what?
There's still pushback.
Yeah.
The pushback started there, right? And it's this lesson that is hard for us truly to learn, because I think maybe at the end of the day we're always looking for the best in everything, and we have that attitude that it can't happen here. And the reality is, and you know this all too well, and I do, and of course John, it's the world we live in, that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I've noticed, it's been my experience over the years, that the pushback that people have is for others. So
Good point.
If it's their access, it's okay. If it's somebody else's access,
Exactly.
we need to keep an eye on those folks. So it really it begs a lot of questions. And you're right. There is still pushback. There are still folks who want to believe that it's not going to happen here.
Right.
It'll never happen here, you know. And I think we went through that phase in Illinois where we felt like these are isolated incidents and it'll never happen here. But as years went by and these incidents continued and they escalated, the message became, you know, it could happen anywhere.
Right.
It
Exactly.
could happen anywhere.
Exactly.
What's your advice to school board members that are just getting elected and walking into this position about the importance of this issue, of this school safety issue?
Well, look, if you don't have a safe school and a safe learning environment, you don't really have the conditions where learning can take place. So if you're going to, and I don't care if it's extracurriculars, because I think you learn a lot from extracurriculars. I was a coach. Some kids started learning at 3 o'clock. You know, they didn't learn much till then. I mean, I went to college to play baseball. I didn't go to get a degree, and I ended up getting one. So I think that's first. We just have to recognize that.
Yeah.
We have to have safe schools, and whatever it takes to achieve that, in terms of resources that we invest, or in terms of policies that we implement, is worth one life, let alone the multiple lives we've seen taken in these schools. So do whatever it takes to make sure that your school building is safe as it can possibly be. Train your people, make sure they're trained in best practice, make sure they know how to keep kids safe in the event that, God forbid, this type of thing might come to your school. But you know, it's got to be job one to make sure you have a secure building. So that's what I would tell them. I would tell them to pay attention to it and learn about the policies at their school, be the best example of those policies, and in the community, support safety measures that are taking place, support resource gathering that will provide schools with the types of security that we know have been proven successful.
Yes.
And if that takes SROs, or if that takes a certain type of door latches or lockdown, invest in it. Invest in it.
Right.
I guess one of the last questions for me that I want to touch on is, you just said it, SROs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's been a change in philosophy in the last few years about the importance and the value of SROs, and you know, I'm a huge advocate, but I know some districts struggle with it.
Chicago yesterday announced that they are likely to remove officers from school buildings. I don't know exactly. I haven't delved into it. It's just emerging information. But you know, to me, I've been around a long time, right? And we used to paddle kids in the 80s, early 80s. And
I might have got paddled once or twice.
I might have been, I might have been involved on the receiving end myself.
Not me. I was.
But,
You've always been an angel over there. Yeah, look at those horns.
We went through this period of time where, and you know, just like anything, you're going to have incidents where people misbehave. But if done correctly, it was discipline that seemed to be acceptable to many, many people. And we did away with that, right? I get it. I get how we evolved from that. But I was watching one day a video, probably 10 years at least after we had banned corporal punishment. And it was a lunchroom fight that was taking place, and an SRO tased the kid. So we don't paddle,
Right.
but we have to tase.
Yeah.
So the irony that caught me, it's like so today where we are, fast forward, my understanding from Nate and others who are experts in this field, like yourself, time is essential.
Yeah.
You know, making sure that there is someone there quickly if an incident takes place, right? So I don't know how much more quickly they can be there than if they're there.
I agree.
So it makes sense that we invest in those trained officers.
Yes.
And have them on site, and that way you don't. I was in a rural area, you know. My school at Hudsonville, unless our town cop, who was part-time, happened to be home and not at Walmart,
Right.
it was 15 minutes from the county dispatch to get to my school.
And that's
right?
that's an eternity.
Now they have an SRO there. They have someone there. And I think that everybody feels better. And there's rural communities, of course, in urban areas are needed too.
Yeah, without question. Do you know, and I don't want to put you on the spot, this thing in Chicago that's just developing, is that a manpower issue by the PD pulling people out, or is that a school district decision to remove?
I think CPS is pursuing it, and I'm not sure if it's a resource issue. I don't know if it has to do with the fact, there's a lot of pressures schools boards deal with as far as resources are concerned, right? And there are some grant monies available for the resource, but maybe they're not enough, and maybe there are other pressures. I also know Chicago, as you know, happens to be a city where they've had an influx of a lot of students from Central America. They're having trouble providing the resources necessary to support learning for those students. It may just, I don't know the details,
Gotcha.
and I'm not sure there's a policy issue or resource issue. And
Gotcha.
those are the two things.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, that's what drives it, one or the other, sure.
Well, I hope it's a resource and not a philosophical issue.
I agree.
Because if it's a philosophical issue, I think it's just one more stake, right? That's been pounded in that is drawing a distinction of what should be and what is.
I need to read a lot more about it. I just heard about it in passing, and
that's
I've been
scary,
at
though.
Well,
this new conference convention, and I've been busy with other things.
It's just this ebb and flow that we see across the country, right? I mean, it happened in Denver, right? School board votes to take the school resource officers out. It was predetermined that there was going to be trouble. And of course there's trouble, and so what happens? Now we're putting the school resource officers back.
Yeah.
And it's that cycle. And the thing that bothers me the most, and we've always said we're going to be honest in this, and this isn't throwing stones at anyone by any means, but we know the past, right? And the past dictates the present. And to remove that layer that is so critical, and the potential of losing a child or allowing that to happen, or a delayed response, it's hard for me as a 30-year retired officer who'd been to 3 school shootings to stomach, right?
Yeah.
Because these are lessons learned. And it's hard for me when we have to go back and learn them over and over again. And it's at the cost of what? It's at the cost of a tragic incident, potentially the loss of a life, the upturn of a community, sometimes the upturn of a state, sometimes the upheaval of the country.
Yeah.
When there's got to be a better way to come to an agreement that, hey, this is where we're at.
Well, and
Versus all or nothing,
well,
right?
and
It
there's no
seems like that's
question.
where we get.
And done correctly, there are lessons learned, and there are ways for students to understand that police officers are there for the public safety. They're there to serve. They're there to protect. They're able to establish a rapport with law enforcement. They're able to, not be confrontational with the people who are trying to protect them if they see a uniformed officer as someone who is there, to help and serve. That's a lesson that's important for our students, and a comfort level that they really need. And so they don't see police officers as some type of villain if they happen to run into one in another part of their life, right? So there's a lot to be learned, and you add that to the safety, and it's a no-brainer to me to make that investment. And like I said, it's an investment. And if you're going to prioritize the most important use of the resources you have as a school district, unless your environment is secure and safe, learning is more difficult. And if you're worried about student learning, you should be worried about school safety.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, this podcast is really dedicated to those who serve. And we talk a lot about life of service and people serving a lot of different capacities, first responders, board members, representatives. I really appreciate your service, and I'm glad you stopped by for a few minutes to hang out with us.
Nate is persuasive
Yes, he
in
is.
a number of ways, and he found out that I was going to be here, and said, hey, you got to get a hold of these guys. They do great work for the cause. And he said, if you can get a hold of John and see if there's a time for you to stop by.
This
So
is great.
Yeah, Nate is persistent, persuasive. There are
Yes, he is.
two words I could use to describe him.
Without
There are
question.
more, but I'll keep those to,
Right.
Well, let's take a break.
SWC is a leader in integrated communication and safety solutions with more than 45 years of experience working with schools around the nation. Among SWC's cutting-edge offerings is Nexus, a powerful, advanced software platform used to centralize and manage safety and security at a single school or across an entire school district. Through an interactive facility map, Nexus integrates features such as cameras, door monitoring, duress alerts, environmental sensors, and more. Nexus is accessible via computer or mobile app, allowing for a complete overview of the school's security infrastructure all on a single, interactive map. In the event of a threat or alarm, immediate alerts are dispatched through email, text message, and mobile app push notifications. Simultaneously, authorities are notified in real time, providing them with detailed information about the location of the threat. This communication ensures that decisive action can be taken within seconds. When time matters and seconds count, SWC's Nexus connects.
So we're joined today by Brian Townsend, and I heard that you're here talking about a really unique topic. You got to explain this to us.
So my topic is leadership lessons from an undercover narc. I worked an interesting undercover operation about 20 years ago. In fact, it was just featured on A&E's Undercover Caught on Tape. It was last Thursday's episode.
Okay.
Very cool.
And
Nice.
I break that story up. Instead of just telling a war story, I wanted to incorporate leadership lessons that were applicable to anyone. So I tell the story, and then every few minutes I kind of tell a leadership lesson from that.
Okay. Very nice. What? So what's the story? Give us a kind of a précis of this, because now I'm curious. You can't leave us hanging on the podcast.
I was working a conspiracy investigation on a target in Arkansas who was selling methamphetamine and marijuana, and his marijuana source of supply was looking for him. He got way behind in his payments. He was getting robbed by other criminals, and it got so bad that they actually came to Arkansas looking for him and pistol whipped an associate, and that scared that person so bad that he called me, and it was an opportunity for me to remove the target in that relationship and deal with the source of supply direct.
Okay.
So, and they were from Mexico. They were involved with the Gulf cartel, and so I was able to ultimately meet them in Dallas, Texas, and
Where we are today. Yeah.
where we are today, right? Yeah.
You having
And,
flashbacks at all?
I am. I'm looking for them,
So
So
you're doing a lot of work talking about fentanyl
Yeah.
around the country, and fentanyl is killing our kids.
absolutely.
It's killing Americans everywhere. How big of a deal is this for people that may not know?
We lose 12 to 13 people every hour now from drug poisoning, and the majority of those deaths are because of fentanyl, synthetic opioids. It's incredible. It's about 75% of all drug poisonings now are because of fentanyl, and the biggest demographic being impacted are our kids. I mean, it's the adolescents, and quite frankly, it's because the drug supply is different. So statistically speaking, if you've ever tried drugs in your life, drugs or alcohol, you were probably a teenager. The difference is when we were teenagers, or our parents or our grandparents, they didn't have fentanyl in the drug supply.
Wow.
Right.
So now you have fentanyl in the drug supply, and only 2 milligrams is enough to kill you. When I say 2 milligrams, I mean that's a couple granules of salt or sand.
Wow.
The way I like to, if you drink coffee, sugar packet, a typical sugar packet is a gram. So a gram is 1,000 milligrams. If that were fentanyl, there'd be 500 deadly doses in that one sugar packet. It's incredible.
It's insane.
It's insane. So in it now we see it in cocaine, we see it in methamphetamine, we see it in weed a little bit, but the pills, Adderall, Xanax, Percocets, Oxys, and that's the biggest threat for the kids. Well, it's all a big threat for our kids, but the pills is it's deadly.
Yeah, it's not a great future when you look towards how big this has gotten and how big it's going to get? Because I don't see a trend slowing down with fentanyl. Do you?
I don't. The traffickers have realized that there's too much money involved in this, especially the cartels, the Sinaloa and the CJNG. They are flooding this country with pills and with fentanyl, and they're making a lot of money because it's an extremely addictive drug, and it's just not slowing down. In fact, it's increasing substantially every month. It's incredible.
Wow.
And it's our own fault. And it's just my own philosophy as a 30-year cop, having gone through this, Colorado being one of the very first states to legalize marijuana. The cartels had to make their money. You take away their crash crop of marijuana, and all of a sudden, boom, now we saw the influx of, we had no heroin, it was almost gone. Now we have that. Now we got fentanyl. Now we've got meth back on the rise. And it was a devastating thing.
Absolutely.
And you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
No, I wish we could.
Right.
No, and the funny thing about, not funny, but the marijuana, you talk about Colorado and other states, even Missouri now, we just legalized it. People don't understand the impact that's going to have on the black market and the cartel.
Without question.
Yeah. I mean, California alone, it's now estimated that 90% of all marijuana is somehow run by black marketeers.
Right.
Cartel being the biggest one. And that we already have a significant Sinaloa and CJNG presence in Missouri, just like we do in other states. They are jumping with joy that we have legalized marijuana, because now they have a way to return to profits on marijuana.
Right.
It's incredible. It is. We've definitely stepped backward on being progressive with those laws.
What are a couple of policy things that can be done that change this paradigm that we're on? Anything?
If you were king for a day.
Yeah. What would you do?
Well, the border is a problem.
You think?
And I'm not.
That comes up in almost every podcast we do.
Yeah.
We talk about the perils.
And the thing is, it's political, and I'm not a political person, but border security and immigration are really two different issues. I mean, we've been doing border security in this country since 1924. Right. We've had barriers at our border for decades. But the problem is now it's either a Republican or a Democrat thing, and it shouldn't be. I mean,
exactly.
Both parties have supported this for again, 1924, we've been doing border security. And a lot of what we're doing at the border is we're just improving security. We're enhancing security. Maybe some of the technologies are better. We use drones, we use sensors. We've been using walls or different barriers for a long time, for decades.
Right.
So that's a big thing. And is it going to stop all the drug supply? Absolutely not. I mean, the normal roads and highways that we use to go to Mexico are the same roads that traffickers use, but they know how to overwhelm the resources.
Yes.
So if they can move thousands of folks in one area, well, then they're just going to move the drugs and the guns and the human trafficking and everything else they're involved with. It's,
right.
That's certainly a concern. And we can't step backwards on how we treat crime either.
Right.
There needs to be consequences for what we do. And now it's bail reform and this and that, and no one's being held accountable for what they're doing. So, and not just from the law, but just in society alone. I mean, that was when I became a police officer, I was really naive. I was, people are lying to me all the time,
Right.
And you get used to it, right? It's crazy, and we have to bring that back into we have to have those discussions in our homes. You need to be accountable for the things you do in life. And
well, we teach what we accept.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it is. It's just, that's what it is. And like you said, there's zero consequences.
There used to be a red line for what was okay and what wasn't okay. That red line has shifted so much that it's no longer red. It's just there's no line.
There's no line.
There is no line, and it's scary. I get asked a lot about what can we do for the fentanyl crisis, and it's one thing I can say is we have to get out of our silos. In law enforcement, we believe that we can arrest our way out of it, and I believe that. Give me the people and the resources, and I'll take care of the problem. And that's it's a revolving door where we're using naloxone, Narcan on the same people. We're dealing with this all the time with the same folks. We need to work with the treatment and prevention folks. We need to work with the medical folks, the educators. I mean, there's so much more we could do. Talking to our children. I mean, that's a big thing.
Right.
I mean, I was just reading a study the other day about if you sit down and talk to your children consistently, you reduce his or hers chance of using drugs at least by 50%.
Wow.
That's incredible. And the longer you can prolong drug use as a teenager, the less likely you're gonna form some type of addiction. Right. Which is, I mean, those are factual numbers that have been around for a long time,
right.
you know, and very passionate about this. So I could.
Well,
You should be, right?
You should be. I mean,
As you should be. These are lessons. This is a recurring theme that we see, right? There's these lessons that we have to relearn. Mm-hmm. And instead of saying, hey, we've learned it, and we maintain it and we push forward, when we talk about school safety or we talk about, active shooters, that type of stuff, now we're talking about fentanyl drugs. These are lessons we've learned. Yeah. And how many more lives do we need to lose to learn them again?
Absolutely.
And it becomes extremely frustrating. And now, the podcast is about the centurion, the one that walks the path of the protector and all of that. And thank God that we have them. And thank God we got guys like you that are out there talking about this, hopefully to save, if not one kid, maybe we save a generation, right? And quit making these same mistakes we make over and over again. It's absurd.
I'm frustrated because, I look at the number of fentanyl-related overdoses I've seen in the last 4 years. It was more than I ever saw in the first 30 years of my career.
Well, exactly. And don't quote, I probably shouldn't say this, but I think my facts are correct. When I left, I retired last May. I think in the state of Colorado, you can have 4 grams of fentanyl.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Right?
That's insane.
And we wonder why.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just threw the stat out there,
Yeah.
the potential deaths in 1 gram, and it's insane to me.
It is. And it's interesting when you look at drug use, especially their young kids, it's actually decreased in this country in the last 20 years. If you look at, other than marijuana, if you look at Monitoring the Future study, which is a well-known study they've been doing for probably the last 30 years at the University of Michigan, and you look at the last 20 years, and just the last 5 years for that matter, illicit drug use, illicit substance use outside of marijuana is actually decreased to record lows. But then you look at deaths, and they have increased at record highs, especially for that age group.
Right.
I think it was last year, or in 2022, 22 adolescents a week.
That's
People aged 14 to 18. They don't know. No one's telling them the dangers of this stuff. So now, and now we're legalizing fentanyl.
Right.
I mean, you get a pill, you think you're buying an Adderall or Percocet, and 2 milligrams, like I said, is nothing.
Right.
And there's instances out there where kids are breaking these in half, and you take one half, I take the other, you die, and I don't.
Right.
And it's heartbreaking. The number of kids who are trying drugs for the first time, experimenting with drugs, and I'm not. It's sad. It's incredible. So.
But I've heard for years and years and years that marijuana is not a gateway drug. So it's okay.
Right?
The problem with marijuana, what I don't like about marijuana is this is not Bob Marley's marijuana.
Yeah.
When we were in high school, one marijuana cigarette is not the equivalent of what one marijuana cigarette now is.
Exactly.
It's about 8 or 9.
Right.
So one today is about 8 or 9 from when we were in high school.
Yeah.
The THC content in marijuana is so strong. Look at psychosis. Just Google psychosis of marijuana. It's incredible what it's doing.
Yeah.
But the problem is you have all these folks out there. It's like, that's just because you're in law enforcement, you're making this stuff up. I mean, how long? I mean, look, it's the same thing with cigarette smoking. It took a long year for us to tell people the obvious before they finally said, oh yeah, I guess it is dangerous.
Right.
So now we're in the early stages of some of this stuff, and they're like, oh, it's 10, 20 years from now, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, you guys were right. It is pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Didn't I hear? So I left Colorado about 1.5 years ago to move out to Missouri because I was just tired of the environment. But didn't I hear, AJ, that the city of Denver legalized mushrooms?
Oh my goodness.
I think the state has.
State has.
Yeah.
Oh, because why not?
I think the
Way to
state
go,
has.
Colorado.
And I get it, right? I got a lot of friends that are vets. I got a lot of guys that have been through a lot of stuff where they talk about the potential for the psilocybin to help with some of the PTSD and some of that. It would just be nice if it was regulated.
Well,
because
that's it.
now it's not.
It's
right?
a medically regulated. I mean, to me, that's
right.
the key
I mean,
to all
that
this,
in my
right?
mind.
Yeah.
Okay, if we want to go down that road, if we want to say there's a value in this, and we want to have that conversation, okay, let's keep it in the hands of the professional. Let's regulate it. Let's use it in the appropriate means. Problem is that's not what goes on, right? Once it's legalized and we can have a certain amount, and then it goes to the kids, and then it becomes much more destructive than anything positive that it could be used for. But yeah, Colorado's going the way of Vancouver, Canada. It's going the way of Seattle, Portland, and at some point we will reap what we sow.
Yeah.
And these same people, I hope, don't walk away, that actually have to own that we reap what we sow. So I'm pretty passionate about it.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
have
It's
any hope for it,
coming
but
from maybe a different direction.
I hope they're held accountable too.
I actually have friends in some of those locations who work in that sector. I've met a lot of folks in treatment, recovery, and a lot of them silently tell me, or secretly tell me, away from all their friends and coworkers, that we've really stepped too far into this stuff.
Yes.
I look at the test strips, like I talk about this when I talk about fentanyl. When you take a pill and you test it with a test strip, you have to destroy the entire pill. So let's just say, for argument's sake, it has no fentanyl or anything illegal in it. Okay, great. That batch can be contaminated. The next pill, unless you test every single pill, which means you destroy it. So that, even though the test strip might be inaccurate as far as what it does, it gives you a false sense of security.
Yes.
So we have a lot of folks that are like, we're just hand out test strips and that'll save folks. It will not save folks. Not
because
at all.
you have to. You got to test everyone, and
single
it
one.
destroys everyone. Yeah.
And people, that's the common sense that we're missing, because we have this, well, we need to do something. Well, I agree, we need to do something, but let's use some common sense and approach this together holistically and figure out how we can safely do this.
Right.
Well, that's pretty amazing. It's disappointing, not surprising. I'm never shocked anymore. I've seen too much crap.
I want to be shocked at one point. I want to be able to say,
we're
really?
too jaded to be shocked anymore. That's the problem. We're not normal people. Just the three of us sitting here are not normal people.
No.
So where are you off to next?
I present here at the COSSBA, and then I'm actually going to Kansas or Nebraska next week.
Oh,
I'll be
okay.
in Omaha and Grand Island, and then I'm coming back down into Kansas, just making a couple stops in Junction City.
So you're
Fort
out there
Riley,
spreading the word.
Yeah, absolutely. I do the fentanyl presentation. Only2mg.com is my website. That's taken me throughout the United States. But I also
Say that again, so we can, and we'll make sure that we get that out so that the listeners can have the opportunity, because your message needs to be heard.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, www.only, and then just the number 2, mg.com. So it's only 2 milligrams is what it is. Yeah,
it's brilliant. Yeah.
And it's actually a 501c3 pending organization. I don't ask for any money to do these presentations unless the organization can fund travel. Then that helps.
Yeah, sure, right.
But I do that throughout the United States, and then I also work for the Mid-States Organized Crime Information Center out of Missouri, and I'm a law enforcement training coordinator for them. So they're very supportive of what I do, and they know how passionate I am about talking about opioids, specifically fentanyl.
Yeah.
Well, since we're in the same state, we need to get together, because I see opportunity with our Center for Education Safety that I run, and working with you to have some of these conversations, because we have too much meth in Missouri, and we got too much fentanyl everywhere else. But AJ, I think to your point, man, if we're gonna save a generation, better figure it out fast.
Yeah.
Because this isn't gonna get better.
It's the perpetual problem, right? We're relearning the lessons we learned.
Yes.
And we just talked about with our last guest, right? The lessons of Columbine. We are still relearning in 2024, and our students, our communities deserve better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They deserve better. And it's the same issue with illicit drugs. It's not my forte, but it's the same thing. We are relearning the same things that we know. And no matter how you try to package it, no matter how you try to sell it, it is what it is. And the message has to be heard. And so grateful that you're out there having the conversation.
Well, Brian, thank you for your service and for what you're doing. And I think what you're doing now is just as valuable as what you did in your career.
Yeah. It's too bad our paths didn't cross in Quantico.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, thank you all for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate you sitting down with us today. Look forward to working in the future.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hey,
Appreciate
thank you
it.
so much.
Thank you guys.
You bet.
All right, we're
You want
going
to
to
wrap this thing up, or you want to take a break?
Let's take a break.
All right, we'll take a break.
Hey, we have our third guest of this episode, and Melissa Randol is joining us. Melissa is our executive director for the Missouri School Board Association and my boss. So,
And by proxy, that makes her my boss.
That's right.
So, yeah, right.
Make us look good, AJ. Yeah. So thanks for bringing us to Dallas.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
We're excited. We just had two of the most amazing interviews.
Yeah.
We did.
Roger Eddy was amazing.
Spontaneous, yeah. I mean, not necessarily planned, and just happened to grab them and bring them in, and really, really good conversations.
That's great.
We were thrilled, and then we met a gentleman who just retired from the DEA that Jonathan introduced us to. He lives in Missouri, speaks all over the country on the fentanyl crisis and the impact to our kids. Oh my gosh, we're going to be working with him.
That's great.
Super
Got a
excited.
great message.
Yeah, really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So how's the conference for you?
You know, it's been really good.
Yeah.
It's been phenomenal to be with all of these advocates for children and, you know, focused on the same thing. And that's what we need to do, whether it's for school safety or for how do we deal with the academic challenges and the social emotional challenges that our children are facing. You know, how do we work together to solve those problems?
Right.
So.
There's a lot of issues, a lot of advocates here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting.
Thousands.
So
Yeah.
COSSBA's becoming kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal. Yeah.
So COSSBA is an offshoot of changes across the country and desire to stand up a new organization for school board members that is maybe getting back to the roots of advocating for kids.
Yeah.
And how many states are now involved in it?
So we have 25 states actively involved, and we have an additional 5 states represented at this conference with school board members at this conference. So I think 30 states
Wow.
That's
total.
great.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's really cool. So school safety has been a big deal for you
Absolutely.
for a long time, a lot
Yeah.
longer than I've been around. What drives that?
Well, thanks to you, John, though, you've taken it to a whole nother level, and AJ, your work too. So we're very, very thankful for that. But our board years ago, they saw that school safety is critical. It's one of those foundational pieces that if you don't lean into that and address that, we're never going to let our students who we're responsible for be able to realize their full potential. If a child doesn't feel safe in the academic environment, they can't focus on calculus, they can't focus on all of the issues that are from an academic perspective. So we all have a vested interest in making sure that we address this as a foundational piece that we must address.
So Missouri School Board Association is the only organization in the country that owns a school safety resource center,
Yeah.
statewide resource center.
Yeah, years ago when our board stepped into this, it was a unique role. Now more school boards associations are able to devote additional resources in that, but we are unique in that we have the Center for Education Safety, and we have had for well over a decade. And that was something, again, they saw as you don't question. We have to lean into this, and so our colleagues around the country are doing the same thing. You don't question. Whatever it takes to ensure that a child their needs are met, we have an obligation to lean into that.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for a few years now. What's the shift that you've seen, the paradigm shift in this conversation about protecting kids and the importance of it? how much bigger is it today than it was when you started?
Yeah, well, it grows every year. We also understand it better in terms of that it's not just about one particular area. Let's say it's not just about active shooter drills. That's a critical piece. But school safety, the safety of children is vast. And it also includes everything from bullying and, those issues that impact the mental health of a child, and on the other spectrum, variables that are out of our control, but we still have to prepare for, such as storms. I mean, Missouri, we're high profile in terms of what that can do to a community and to a school district. And so just about everything in between, from the variables that are human-made to those that are not, but they impact whether a child feels, whether they can focus on those academic pieces and realize what we're there to do, and that's educate them.
I've been amazed just the amount of people here that are really focused on this issue.
Yeah.
That really, it's a passion project.
Yeah.
And something that they're pretty focused on, just not only in the work they do as a school board, but as a community member and leader. That's maybe one of the most heartening things.
Yeah.
It seems like we were just talking about where the fight right now is to save a generation.
Yeah.
All the things that suicidal ideation, fentanyl, active shooter, bullying, all of the threats that they're facing.
Yeah. It is a monumental task.
Monumental.
Right.
Have you all seen an uptick in recent years in some of those things, such as suicide and the mental health piece? And do you attribute any of that to COVID? We're hearing a lot about that, in recent years. Or did you see that uptick prior to COVID?
I think COVID was, again, one of those moments that really changed, right? It was this abnormal thing that we did not know how to deal with, and I don't think we're still managing it well, right? I mean, we're doing the best we can to try to get some type of normalcy back, and maybe even try to normalize something that was so difficult to normalize, right? And so unfortunately, I think the waves of COVID are going to continue to impact. How we overcome that, I don't know, because it touched everything, right? Whether it be from learning, from the way that we socialized our kids, the way that, even this community, in the community that we treated one another.
Yeah.
Tough thing to overcome. We're headed, I think, in the right direction. Again, we're back in school, we're doing this, we understand it better. I think the fear that was initially there is dissipating. I hope, we always talk about lessons learned, I hope this prepares us to how to respond to the next pandemic that comes down, right? Hopefully we've taken this information, we're better informed, we have a blueprint. We look at that blueprint, was it right, was it wrong? Emphasize the good stuff and prepare for that next one, because we know that's going to happen. Right?
You talked about relationships, and that's just one of those things that seemed to be somewhat fractured when we were forced to be in this artificial separation during COVID. And I wonder, John, with we're seeing an explosion of artificial intelligence. And what that's going to look like from impacting the K-12 community as well as society as a whole. Obviously there's great opportunity with that, but are there some risks too that we're taking when we don't have a full understanding of what that's going to look like and what that's going to mean?
I think it's a huge risk right now. It's the unknown, and what we don't know is vast. It's going to change every threat paradigm out there, and I think that's the biggest concern, is everything from how, whatever the threat is, whether it's a threat of violence, whether it's a threat of drugs, suicidal behavior, it's going to change how the threats occur, the information that kids are taking in and processing, and it's going to make it more complicated for us to respond.
It's going to change how it's broadcast.
Yep.
Right.
And that broadcast, that's probably the most terrifying thing out there, because how do you fight that? when that broadcast happens and it's AI generated versus human generated, that's really different. They may look alike, but they're not alike.
Right.
How do you distinguish between that is a big question. And even sort of a little bit different than that is this further fracturing of relationships and contact with humans. Our general session speaker was phenomenal, but one of the things she talked about is the future and what does that look like with, particularly with AI and other technology components, and about how even today people are developing sort of conversational relationships with their AI, generative AI platform. And is that going to, are we ready for that from a psychological perspective?
No.
And are we?
I don't know.
Well, our kids have become so connected to this, they're no longer connected to this.
Yeah.
Right? So pure interaction is disappearing. Machine interaction is growing. The two are going to bypass.
Right.
If they haven't already bypassed. I don't know how you deal with that.
Yeah.
I'm close to retirement.
No. Don't even.
Right.
Either one of you are allowed to use that word.
I've failed at retirement, but yeah, right.
By the time, I think when that pass by happens, it'll be time for me to say I'm out.
Well, I hope it never happens,
Right.
but no,
it's the great worry.
I guess I worry about that too, and I'm excited about the components of AI that will allow us to do things we haven't effectively done before, such as individualized education. Meet the children where they're brought to school and help them maximize their ability to succeed. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're ready as much as we can be on that relationship side. When we're further kind of going a little bit deeper into not having some of the traditional relationships with each other. And will that make your job more difficult on a safety side?
Well, I think you'll have customizable education on the positive side. On the negative side, the threat management of this is going to be completely different, and it's going to come down to IT people having a bigger role in helping us to identify and understand and vet on a rapid basis so that the responders, the boots on the ground, can get to the threat and stop it.
Yeah.
And the complication is that we're adding this new layer.
It's a new layer.
And that's the
becomes
problem.
difficult.
We're going to create this greater distance in response while we're trying to
And
investigate.
distance equals time, and time is lives. And so that's the difficult part. And these things, as exciting as they are, and we bring on these new technologies and we do these things, the sad part is there's always that dark element.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's going to manipulate it for whatever it can.
Yeah.
And it comes back to climate and culture, which is relationships, which is understanding, which is being involved. And sometimes that's a lot of heavy lifting.
Right.
Well, make sure we have the energy for it.
Exactly. What I've heard both of you say over and over and over, and it just continues to apply in just about every situation we talk about, is that climate culture piece. And if you are just investing in some of the other components of a safety program and not investing in that, you're never going to quite get there, right?
You're not going to get there. No. You're not going to get there. So you might get lucky and stop something.
Right.
But you're not going to have the environment that you want to have, that you would want to, grow up in as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot to unpack. So I think, we may need like a quarterly episode with Melissa.
I would love that.
Talking about, the future.
Totally.
Because look, we're not preparing for it. It's going to be on top of us, and we're going to be saying, I got no clue. We can't do this, and we can't afford not to do it. We can't afford not to be prepared for what's coming.
Yeah.
So,
I so appreciate both of you and what you're doing, and in terms of keeping us focused on the future and doing what we can to prepare and build that foundation that regardless of what the future brings, we know with a strong climate culture commitment that's embedded into a safety program, we can be best prepared.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks for the opportunity.
We're super excited, and we've been meaning to have you on the podcast since we started, and now actually had to come to Dallas.
Get to Texas.
make it
And
happen.
I
That's
like
right.
the idea of the quarterly
I do too.
fireside chat with Melissa.
I like that. We even have a fireplace at the
Well,
office.
There we go.
Set up.
All right, I love it.
That'd be fun.
I
love
Hot
it.
cocoa and everything.
That's right.
All right.
Exactly. Well,
thank
thanks
you
for
both.
joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Well, hang tight and let's close with our toast.
Yes.
And this way you can, even though we don't have our drinks,
Yeah.
but as we traditionally close, right, with our hopefully for our listeners, our familiar toast to us and those like us, the Centurions. Damn few left.
Damn few left. We're out.